At a supermarket in Chicago, four destinies crossed paths in a moment that would change their lives forever. Jasmine, a poor, black, single mother of only 20 years old, was holding her one-year-old baby in her arms. What she didn't know was that her desperate plea for food would be met with the cruelest public humiliation by the manager, a man with a cold stare and a heart hardened by prejudice. But fate had a surprise in store. Michael Jordan, the basketball legend, was at the supermarket. What Michael Jordan did when he saw that injustice left everyone speechless and forever transformed the lives of Jasmine and her son. Keep watching the video and be moved by this powerful story of resilience. The clock read 7:37 p.m. when Jasmine Williams walked through the automatic doors of Elite Supermarket in Chicago. The cold air conditioning inside contrasted with the muggy summer night outside. In her trembling arms, her one-year-old son, Elijah, slept peacefully. The baby's small body was wrapped in a thin blanket, one of the few belongings Jasmine still had from better days. Jasmine's eyes scanned the brightly lit store. Shelves full of food seemed to mock her. Her stomach ached. It wasn't the first time that week she had to choose between eating or saving what little money she had. The young 20-year-old mother had made up her mind. Today she needed to eat something, or she wouldn't have the strength to nurse her child the next morning. Just 2 more days until I get paid from Mrs. Peterson's house, she thought, trying to convince herself she was doing the right thing by spending her last savings. Her calloused hands, rough from scrubbing floors and bathrooms, were proof of her daily routine as a house cleaner, working in different homes just to survive with her son. The baby stirred in her arms, restless. Jasmine held him tighter against her chest, feeling his little heart beat in sync with hers. Elijah was her world, her reason to keep fighting even when everything seemed to fall apart. "It's going to be okay, my love," she whispered to him, though she knew things were far from okay. Jasmine walked slowly down the aisles, mentally calculating every cent. In the worn cloth bag slung over her shoulder, just $27.45. All the money she had until the next paycheck. It wasn't much, but it had to be enough. A bag of rice, $5.99. A bag of beans, $7.50. Half a dozen eggs, $3.99. A pack of instant noodles, $1.29. She added it up in her head, lips moving silently as she walked. She couldn't go over $27.45. Every penny counted. In the fruit section, Jasmine allowed herself to dream for a moment. She picked up an apple, feeling its weight in her hand. Elijah needs fruit to grow strong, she thought. She looked at the price, $2.49 per pound. She hesitated but placed the apple in her small shopping basket. Maybe she could cut something else out. The baby woke up, his big brown eyes looking around with curiosity. He smiled at his mother, a toothless grin that brought tears to Jasmine's eyes. "One day I'll give you everything you deserve, my love," she silently promised, kissing her son's forehead. That was when she felt the first stare. A man in a well-tailored suit was watching her from the end of the aisle. It was Richard Collins, the manager of Elite Supermarket, known for his strictness and for treating customers differently based on their appearance or social class. Jasmine immediately lowered her gaze, a reflex learned from years of being made invisible by society. She quickened her pace, trying to finish her shopping as fast as possible. Her baby, sensing his mother's tension, began to whimper. "Shh, it's okay," she murmured, rocking him gently. But the crying grew louder, echoing through the supermarket aisles. "Ma'am!" The authoritative voice made Jasmine freeze. The manager approached with firm steps, his face twisted in a look of disdain. "If that child doesn't stop crying, I'll have to ask you to leave." Jasmine felt her face burn with shame. "Sorry, he's just hungry. I'm finishing up quickly." Richard Collins looked her up and down, taking in her simple clothes, her curly hair tied back in a messy bun, the patched-up bag. His eyes narrowed. "I'm watching you," he said in a low but threatening tone. A chill ran down Jasmine's spine. She knew that kind of treatment well. She knew what it meant to be judged before even saying a word. In another aisle of the same store, someone was discreetly watching the scene. Michael Jordan, the legendary basketball player, now 63 years old, was spending a few days in Chicago for charity events. Dressed simply, in a white t-shirt and jeans, He managed to keep a low profile, though his impressive height still drew attention. Michael had been selecting a few items when he heard the baby crying and the manager's harsh voice. Something about the scene made him stop and watch. There was something familiar in the young mother's posture, something that deeply touched his memories. Meanwhile, Jasmine continued her small journey through the store. Now with Elijah awake and fussy, the baby stretched out his arms, wanting to grab everything he saw. She tried to soothe him with sweet words, but her own stomach was growling, and weakness made it hard even to hold him. Passing through the dairy section, her eyes landed on a small yogurt cup. Elijah loved yogurt. On the rare occasions she could buy it, he devoured it with such joy that it filled Jasmine's heart with happiness. But the yogurt cost $1.99. It didn't fit in her tight budget. "Another day, my love," she whispered to him, pulling herself away from the temptation. The weakness was getting worse. Jasmine hadn't eaten anything substantial in 2 days, surviving on stale bread and black coffee. She breastfed Elijah every day, which drained her energy. She suddenly felt dizzy and had to lean on a shelf to avoid collapsing. That was when the manager reappeared, now accompanied by a security guard. "Ma'am, are you all right?" The question sounded insincere, laced with suspicion rather than concern. "Yes, just a little tired," Jasmine replied, straightening up. The manager muttered, his eyes scanning the small shopping basket she carried. "And doesn't look like you're buying much. Are you sure you can pay for this?" The question hit Jasmine like a slap. She felt her blood boil, but years of silent suffering had taught her to swallow her pride. "Yes, sir, I have enough," she answered softly, trying to hide her trembling hands. The manager smirked, a cold expression that never reached his eyes. "Well, I hope so. We've had problems with people like you before." "People like you." The words hung in the air, their meaning crystal clear. Because she was young, because she was black, because she was poor. Jasmine held Elijah even closer to her chest, as if she could shield him from the cruel words. The baby, sensing his mother's distress, began crying again, this time louder. "Could you please control your child?" the manager snapped, loud enough for other nearby customers to hear. "This is a respectable establishment." Jasmine felt all eyes on her. The humiliation burned more than the hunger. "I'm trying, sir. He's just hungry and—" "Then maybe you should feed him before coming in here and disturbing our customers," the manager interrupted. "Or better yet, maybe you should shop somewhere more appropriate for your situation." The words were like knives to her heart. Jasmine looked around, seeing a mix of pity and judgment in the eyes of the other customers. No one offered to help. No one said a word in her defense. Elijah's cries grew louder, echoing through the supermarket. Jasmine tried to soothe him, but her own emotions were spiraling out of control. A tear slipped down her cheek. "I'm sorry," she whispered, unsure if she was apologizing to her son, the manager, or the world that seemed so determined to crush her spirit. The manager crossed his arms, a smug smile on his face. "Look, I don't want any trouble here. Why don't you just put those items back and we'll forget this ever happened?" "But I need this food," Jasmine said, her voice barely more than a whisper. "I have the money. Please." "The money?" The manager laughed, a cold, cruel sound. "Then show me." With trembling hands, Jasmine opened her worn-out purse and pulled out a small plastic bag containing her money. Some crumpled bills and a few coins. $27.45 exactly. Her entire fortune. The manager gave the money a quick glance and sneered. "That's barely enough for what you grabbed. And besides," he lowered his voice, leaning in closer, "how do I know you didn't get that money through questionable means?" The accusation hung in the air, poisonous and deliberate. Jasmine felt like she had been punched in the stomach. "What? No, I earned this cleaning houses. I work hard for every dollar." "Oh, I'm sure you do," the manager replied, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Look, I'm going to have to ask you to leave now. We can't have people like you disturbing our real customers." "People like you," the phrase hit like a curse, branding her as something less than human. "Please," Jasmine begged, desperation rising in her voice. "I can put some things back. I just need enough food to feed my baby. I haven't eaten in 2 days so I can keep breastfeeding." Something flickered in the manager's eyes. A flash of humanity, quickly extinguished. "Not my problem," he said coldly. "Security will walk you out." The security guard, a large man with a blank expression, stepped forward. "Ma'am, please come with me." Jasmine froze, unable to believe what was happening. In her arms, Elijah kept crying, his little face red with anguish, as if he somehow understood the injustice happening to his mother. "Can I at least buy a loaf of bread?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Just a loaf of bread for my baby?" The manager stared at her with disgust. "You're holding up the line. Leave now, or we'll have to call the police." Just the mention of the police sent a chill of fear down Jasmine's spine. As a young black woman, she knew exactly what could happen if the police got involved. She'd seen the news, heard the stories. She couldn't take that risk, not with Elijah in her arms. With a defeated nod, she turned to leave, holding her son even closer to her chest. The small basket of items she had so carefully chosen was left behind on the floor, a monument to her shattered dignity. As she walked toward the exit, heads turned to watch her. Some looked away, uncomfortable witnessing such cruelty. Others stared openly, as if her humiliation was a spectacle for their entertainment. But one pair of eyes watched with a very different emotion. At the end of an aisle, Michael Jordan had seen it all. His jaw was clenched, his hands gripping the shopping cart so tightly his knuckles turned white. Seeing that young mother, barely more than a girl, holding her crying baby while being publicly humiliated, something powerful stirred within him. Memories of his own mother, Dolores Jordan, filled his mind. How she fought and sacrificed to raise her children, working multiple jobs, stretching every penny. His mother always told him, "You never judge someone until you've walked a day in their shoes." And Michael had never forgotten those words, even when fame and fortune changed his life. Now seeing this scene unfold, a deep rage surged within him, an anger he hadn't felt in years. But beneath the anger, there was something even stronger, an unshakable determination. Without a second thought, he left his own cart and began walking toward the front of the store, his stride long and steady. The famous Michael Jordan walk, confident, unstoppable, ready to take action. As Jasmine reached the automatic doors, now with tears streaming freely down her face, the security guard hovering uncomfortably close behind her, she had no idea her life was about to change forever. Behind her, a legend was approaching, and Michael Jordan was never the kind of man to back down from a challenge, especially when it was the right thing to do. Jasmine was already near the supermarket exit, with Elijah crying desperately in her arms. Every step toward those automatic doors felt like lead. It wasn't just the hunger that ached in her empty stomach. It was the humiliation, the helplessness, the cruel injustice of having her dignity stripped away in public. The security guard walked just behind her, as if she were a criminal being escorted out. Jasmine could feel the stares of the other customers burning into her back. Some looked away, ashamed to witness such cruelty. Others watched with indifference, as if the suffering of a young black mother wasn't worth even a second of compassion. "Just one more day, Lord," Jasmine thought, swallowing her sobs. "God, just give me strength for one more day." Then a deep, powerful voice cut through the oppressive silence of the supermarket. "Excuse me. Hold on a moment, please." The tone was so commanding that the security guard stopped automatically. Jasmine also halted, slowly turning around with the crying baby in her arms. Her eyes widened at the sight of the man approaching with determined steps. He was tall, impressively tall, with broad shoulders and a presence that seemed to fill the entire space. Despite his age, he walked like an athlete, with the unwavering confidence of someone used to dominating any space he entered. Even dressed simply, there was something unmistakably powerful about him. Michael Jordan walked straight up to Jasmine, completely ignoring the security guard. When he spoke, his voice was gentle, contrasting with the authority he had shown seconds earlier. "Are you and your baby okay?" he asked, his eyes filled with genuine concern. Jasmine, stunned by the sudden intervention, simply shook her head, unable to form words. Elijah kept crying, small sobs shaking his fragile little body. Michael looked at the baby and then back at Jasmine, noticing the paleness of her face, the sunken eyes, the clear signs of malnutrition. "You need help, don't you?" Michael asked, though it sounded more like a statement than a question. Before Jasmine could answer, the manager, Richard Collins, appeared, his face a mask of fake cordiality upon recognizing the famous former basketball player. "Mr. Jordan, what an honor to have you in our store," he exclaimed, his voice syrupy and artificial. "I hope you're finding everything you need. If there's anything I can do—" "Actually, there is," Michael interrupted, his tone polite but firm. "I'd like to understand why this young mother is being escorted out of your establishment." The manager's smile faltered slightly. "Oh, that? It's just a routine matter. She was disturbing the other customers." Michael raised an eyebrow, his piercing gaze fixed on the manager's face. "Disturbing? In what way exactly?" "Well, the baby wouldn't stop crying and—" "Babies cry, Mr. Collins," Michael interrupted again, pointing to the name tag on the manager's chest. "That's what they do when they're hungry or uncomfortable." The manager shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, of course, but there are also security concerns. We have to ensure that all our customers can actually pay for what they intend to buy." The last words were laced with implication. Michael remained silent for a few seconds, his eyes never leaving the manager's face. When he spoke again, his voice carried a dangerously calm tone. "I'm curious, Mr. Collins. How exactly do you determine which customers can pay and which can't? Is it the clothes they wear, the color of their skin, or maybe the fact that they're single mothers with babies in their arms?" The manager turned pale. "Mr. Jordan, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I never—" "I saw everything," Michael interrupted, his voice now louder, drawing the attention of everyone in the store. "I saw how you treated her. I saw how you publicly humiliated her. I saw how you made her feel less than human." A heavy silence fell over the store. Customers stopped pushing their carts. Cashiers paused their work. All eyes were fixed on the unfolding scene, the legendary Michael Jordan confronting the store manager in defense of a young black mother. Richard Collins swallowed hard, trying to regain his composure. "Mr. Jordan, with all due respect, you don't understand our policy. We have procedures to follow, and discrimination is not a procedure, Mr. Collins. It's a crime." The words fell like a hammer in the silent atmosphere. Jasmine, who had been watching everything with her heart pounding, felt a wave of gratitude so intense it nearly overwhelmed her. No one, absolutely no one, had ever stood up for her like this before. The manager began to visibly sweat. "Mr. Jordan, please. It's not what it looks like. We were just—" "Let's clarify this situation right now," Michael declared, turning to Jasmine. "Ma'am, you intended to pay for the items you were shopping for, didn't you?" "Yes, sir," Jasmine replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have exactly $27.45. Michael nodded slowly, turning his gaze back to the manager. "So what exactly is the problem here, Mr. Collins?" The manager hesitated, glancing nervously around, realizing dozens of witnesses were watching. "Well, we weren't sure if the money would cover all the items, and so you decided to humiliate her over a few dollars?" Anger began to show in Michael Jordan's voice. Not explosive anger, but something deeper, more controlled, and all the more threatening. "Here's what we'll do," said Michael, turning again to Jasmine with a gentle smile. "What's your name?" "Jasmine. Jasmine Williams," she replied, still dazed by the entire situation. Michael was touched because the young woman had the same name as his daughter. "And this little guy?" Michael asked, pointing to the baby who had stopped crying and was now curiously watching the tall stranger. "Elijah," Jasmine answered, a small smile appearing on her lips for the first time that night. "Nice to meet you, Jasmine and Elijah," said Michael, his voice soft and respectful. "Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to take you back through the aisles so you can choose everything you need, not just what fits in your $27.45, but everything you and Elijah truly need. And it'll be on me." Jasmine's eyes widened in shock. "What? No, sir, I can't accept—" "Please," Michael gently interrupted her. "It would be an honor for me. Consider it a thank you." "A thank you?" Jasmine asked, confused. "For what?" Michael's smile widened. "For reminding me of something my mother always taught me, that when we make it to the top, we must never forget where we came from and help those in need." The words struck Jasmine deeply. Silent tears began to stream down her face again, but this time they were different. Tears of relief, of gratitude. Michael turned to the manager, whose arrogance had been replaced by sheer panic. "Mr. Collins, you will personally make sure this lady gets a shopping cart and all the respect she deserves while picking out what she needs. And when she's done, I'll personally check to make sure nothing was missed. Understood?" It wasn't a question. It was an order. The manager nodded quickly, mumbling a nearly inaudible, "Yes, sir." "Great," said Michael, his voice returning to a friendly tone. "Now, Jasmine, let's start over. This time, the right way." He offered his arm to her, a chivalrous gesture that made several customers sigh with emotion. Jasmine, still holding Elijah, timidly accepted the support and began walking beside the basketball legend back through the supermarket aisles. The buzz spread quickly. "That's Michael Jordan! He's helping that woman!" Cell phones began to appear, discreetly recording the moment. Employees whispered among themselves, watching their manager completely humiliated, trailing behind the pair with an empty shopping cart. Michael led Jasmine through the aisle of basic food items first. "Get whatever you need," he said gently. "Don't worry about the price." Jasmine hesitated, her hand trembling as she reached for a larger, higher quality bag of rice than she would normally buy. "Are you sure?" she asked in a low voice, still unable to believe the sudden turn in her luck. "Absolutely," Michael replied, and grabbed 2 packs just in case. Gradually, Jasmine's confidence began to grow. She started placing items in the cart that she usually could only dream of. A large pack of diapers for Elijah, fresh fruits, vegetables, meats, milk, cereals, hygiene products. Michael kept encouraging her, sometimes suggesting additional items. "My mom always said a good breakfast is essential," he commented, placing a box of cereal in the cart. "And Elijah needs vitamins to grow up strong, like Uncle Mike here." Jasmine smiled, gently rocking Elijah in her arms. The baby, sensing his mother's lifted spirit, smiled too, occasionally reaching out toward Michael. "Can I hold him for a bit?" Michael asked, surprising Jasmine. "Sure," she stammered, carefully transferring the baby into the former athlete's arms. Michael held Elijah with surprising ease, balancing the little one in one arm while continuing to point out items on the shelves with his free hand. The baby seemed utterly delighted with his new friend, giggling and grabbing onto Michael's sweatshirt with his chubby little hands. Meanwhile, the store manager, Richard Collins, followed behind them, pushing the cart that was quickly filling up. His face showed a mix of shame and fear. Shame for being exposed for his discriminatory behavior and fear of the possible consequences for his career. Several customers deliberately passed through the aisle where they were, some pretending to look for items, others openly curious to see the famous Michael Jordan holding a baby and helping a young mother in need. When they reached the baby products section, Michael insisted that Jasmine pick up not only immediate necessities, but supplies for several weeks. "You never know when an emergency might come up," he explained. "Better to be prepared." The cart was nearly full when Michael casually asked, "You said you work as a cleaner, right?" Jasmine nodded, a blush rising to her cheeks. "Yes, sir, in private homes." "An honorable and important job," Michael said sincerely. "My mom did similar work to support our family when I was a kid. I know how hard it is." The revelation surprised Jasmine. It was hard to imagine that the legendary Michael Jordan, a symbol of success and wealth, could understand her reality. "And do you have any dreams, Jasmine? Something you'd like to do if you had the chance?" The question caught Jasmine off guard. How long had it been since anyone cared about her dreams? How long since she herself had even thought about them? I always wanted to study nursing," she finally admitted, almost in a whisper. "Before Elijah was born, I was saving up to take a technical course. But then his father left us and—" Her voice faltered. Michael nodded empathetically, adjusting Elijah in his arms. "It's never too late to start over. You seem like someone who doesn't give up easily." Jasmine felt something stir inside her, a small flame of hope that had been nearly extinguished by the daily struggles of survival. When they finally reached the checkout, the cart was overflowing, not just with food, but with everything a young mother and her baby could need. The panic in the cashier's eyes when she recognized Michael Jordan nearly made Jasmine smile. Good, good evening, Mr. Jordan, the young woman stammered, scanning the items with trembling hands. Good evening, Michael replied politely, still holding Elijah, who was now happily playing with the drawstring of his hoodie. The final total was astonishing, $887.65, an amount that seemed like an impossible fortune to Jasmine. But Michael paid it without hesitation, handing over his card with the same hand that had won NBA championships. As the staff packed the groceries into several bags, Michael turned to the manager, who had remained silent through the entire process. Mr. Collins, Michael called, his voice once again assuming that calm, dangerous tone. Before we leave, I'd like to have a word with you in private. The manager swallowed hard but nodded, following Michael to a more secluded corner. Jasmine couldn't hear what was said, but she saw the manager's expression change from fear to utter terror and then to deep shame. The conversation lasted only a few minutes, with Michael doing most of the talking and the manager nodding repeatedly. When they returned, the manager looked like a shadow of the arrogant man he had been. He approached Jasmine, avoiding direct eye contact. Mrs. Williams, he began, his voice so low she could barely hear him. I would like to offer my sincerest apologies for the treatment you received today. It was completely unacceptable and does not reflect this company's values. Jasmine remained silent, too surprised to respond. Furthermore, the manager continued, clearly uncomfortable, I'd like to inform you that from now on, you have a permanent credit at our store. Whenever you need supplies for yourself or your child, please come directly to my office. Michael nodded slightly, apparently satisfied with the apology. When all the groceries were packed, several employees offered to help carry them. Michael, still holding Elijah, now peacefully asleep in his arms, asked Jasmine, How did you get here? By bus, she replied shyly. Michael shook his head. That won't work with all these bags and little Elijah. My driver will take you home. When we get there, I'd like to talk to you about something. Before Jasmine could protest, Michael was already guiding her out of the supermarket, where a sleek black SUV waited at the entrance. The driver quickly exited the vehicle to open the doors and help load the groceries into the trunk. Other customers watched in awe, some even applauding quietly. Many recorded the moment on their phones, knowing they were witnessing something special, a moment of pure humanity from a living legend. Before getting into the car, Michael finally handed Elijah back to his mother. The baby, still asleep, made a soft sound of contentment upon smelling Jasmine's familiar scent. Thank you, Jasmine said, tears streaming freely down her face. Not just for the groceries, but for standing up for me, for showing me that I matter. Michael smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his face. You matter, Jasmine. You and Elijah matter a lot. Never forget that. He looked back at the supermarket, where the manager and several employees stood watching at the entrance, and then turned again to Jasmine. You know what my mom used to say? The true greatness of a person isn't in their height, their wealth, or the medals they've won. It's in how they treat those who can do nothing for them. The words struck deep into Jasmine's soul. For months, maybe years, she had felt invisible, as if her existence didn't matter to anyone but her son. And now, in a single night, someone had not only noticed her existence, but had stood up for her dignity. Now, said Michael, helping her into the luxurious vehicle, David and I will take you and Elijah home safely with all your groceries. Jasmine settled into the soft leather seat, Elijah sleeping peacefully in her arms. He closed the door gently. As the car pulled out of the supermarket parking lot, Jasmine felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. A real, tangible hope that warmed her heart like the first rays of sunlight after a long, dark night. What she didn't know was that that night at the supermarket was only the beginning. Michael Jordan wasn't the kind of man who did things halfway, and he already had much bigger plans for Jasmine and Elijah. Plans that would change their lives forever. The luxurious black SUV glided silently through the increasingly narrow and deteriorated streets of Chicago. As they drove on, the towering buildings of the downtown area gave way to abandoned structures, peeling facades, and cracked sidewalks. Michael Jordan stared out the window, feeling a growing unease in his chest. Beside him, Jasmine Williams gently rocked Elijah, who slept with the peacefulness only children know, oblivious to the harsh realities of the world around him. Turn left here, please, Jasmine timidly instructed the driver, pointing toward a dimly lit street. It's at the end of the block. The driver exchanged a quick glance with Michael in the rearview mirror before making the turn. The transformation of the landscape was jarring. Lit only by the car's headlights and a few functioning street lamps, worn-down buildings appeared, with broken windows covered in cardboard and small groups of people huddled around burning barrels for warmth. This is it, Jasmine said softly, pointing to a brick building in sight. 4 stories tall, its facade once red, but now almost black with dirt and decay. The driver stopped the vehicle, and Michael immediately noticed there were no parking spaces, no organized entrance, just a patch of hard-packed dirt between buildings, where a few abandoned car skeletons served as a grim playground for children during the day. "Third floor," Jasmine explained, a flush of embarrassment coloring her cheeks. "The elevator hasn't worked in over a year." Michael nodded silently, opening the car door. "David, please wait here. We're going to carry all these bags upstairs." The driver, clearly uncomfortable with the surroundings, but determined not to show it, replied simply, "Yes, sir." Michael picked up most of the bags, leaving only 2 of the lightest for Jasmine, who still carried Elijah in one arm. When they entered the building, the smell hit him like a slap, a mixture of mold, urine, and spoiled food. The lobby light flickered intermittently, casting ghostly shadows on the graffiti-covered walls. The concrete staircase was narrow, the steps uneven, some partially broken. The climb was slow, with Michael carefully avoiding cracks and small debris scattered across the way. "Sorry for the inconvenience," Jasmine murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "I usually hold Elijah really close so he doesn't breathe in too much of the air in here." Michael felt his heart tighten. "Don't worry about me. I'm fine." On the 3rd floor, the hallway was even darker than the stairwell. Of the 6 doors, only 3 seemed occupied. The others were boarded up or wide open, revealing empty, abandoned spaces. "It's the last door on the right," Jasmine said, rummaging through her worn purse to find the key. The lock protested as she turned it, requiring a gentle push with her shoulder to get the door open. "Please, come in," she invited, turning on a weak light that barely illuminated the tiny apartment. What Michael saw in that moment would be etched into his memory forever. The apartment was really just a single room, no bigger than a cheap hotel room. In one corner, a thin, worn mattress lay directly on the floor, covered with clean but so faded and patched sheets that their original color was impossible to determine. Next to the mattress, an overturned cardboard box served as an improvised crib for Elijah, lined with carefully folded blankets. The bathroom was merely a corner separated by a torn plastic curtain, consisting of a toilet with a broken lid and a stained sink. What passed for the kitchen was a single hot plate atop a wobbly folding table, next to one pot, a plate, and a few meticulously washed and organized utensils. A small refrigerator from what looked like the 1980s hummed noisily in the corner, struggling to function. The walls bore marks of water damage and mold, and the ceiling had a large yellow stain that clearly leaked during heavy storms. The only window was partially covered with aluminum foil to block streetlight and offer some privacy. Even amidst all this hardship, Michael immediately noticed the subtle signs of dignity and love. The mattress, though old, was impeccably made. The cracked linoleum floor had been freshly mopped. On an improvised shelf made of bricks and planks, a few used books were neatly arranged beside a worn-out teddy bear, clearly Elijah's favorite toy. "It's not much," Jasmine said softly, setting her bags on the floor and carefully laying her sleeping son on the mattress. "But it's our home." Michael was speechless. In all his years of fame and fortune, even with all the philanthropic work he'd done, nothing had prepared him to witness such raw poverty and, at the same time, such evident dignity. "You," he began, but his voice faltered. "You keep everything so clean." A faint smile appeared on Jasmine's tired face. "My mom used to say that being poor doesn't mean being dirty. Cleanliness is about character, not about money." Michael nodded, feeling a growing pressure in his chest. "My mom used to say something similar." He began placing the grocery bags on the floor, realizing with a jolt that there wasn't even enough space for all the food they'd bought. The tiny refrigerator could barely hold a third of the refrigerated items. "We can store some things in Mrs. Martinez's fridge down the hall," Jasmine explained, seeming to read his mind. She watches Elijah sometimes when I manage to get extra hours at work. Michael sat on the apartment's only chair, a metal folding chair with worn-out padding, while Jasmine began to put the groceries away, moving with the efficiency of someone who's learned to make miracles with the bare minimum. "How did you end up here?" he asked gently, watching how she carefully organized each item as if they were precious treasures. Jasmine worked in silence for a moment before replying. "It's a long story, but the short version is, I got pregnant in my senior year of high school. Elijah's father said he'd support me, that we'd stay together." She let out a bitter laugh. "He disappeared when I was 6 months along. I never saw him again." She continued putting the food away, now moving more slowly. "My parents died in a car accident when I was 16. I lived with my aunt, but she made it clear there was no room for a baby. So when Elijah was born, I came here. It's what I could afford." Jasmine paused and looked at her sleeping son. "You know what's the hardest part? It's not going hungry. It's not working until your bones ache." She swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "It's knowing that no matter how hard I try, it never seems to be enough to give him a better life. It's looking at the future and seeing just more of the same." The words hung in the air, heavy as lead. Michael closed his eyes for a moment, letting a wave of memories wash over him. Suddenly, he was no longer in that small apartment in Chicago. He was in Wilmington, North Carolina, decades ago. He began to remember the day it rained mercilessly, and at only 9 years old, he helped his mother position buckets and pots to collect the water dripping from the ceiling. "Don't worry, Michael," said Dolores Jordan, with that unshakable strength the boy so admired. "This will pass. Everything passes." He watched his mother's hands already calloused from working as a housekeeper and factory worker, often juggling 2 or 3 jobs to support her children. "One day, Mom," little Michael promised, "I'm going to buy you a big house where the roof won't leak when it rains." Dolores smiled, that smile that lit up the whole room, no matter how dark it was. "I know you will, son. But remember, a person's value isn't in what they have, but in what they do with what they have." Later that night, Michael heard his mother quietly crying in the kitchen after everyone had gone to sleep. She was counting coins by candlelight, trying to figure out how she would buy school supplies for all her children the next month. The boy returned to bed silently, a burning determination in his chest. One day he would make his mother smile more than cry. One day he would give her everything she deserved. "Mr. Jordan, are you okay?" Jasmine's soft voice brought him back to the present. Michael opened his eyes, surprised to feel a tear running down his face. He wiped it away quickly. "Sorry," he said, straightening in his chair. "I was just remembering. My mother worked as a housekeeper for many years. We lived in a small house that also leaked when it rained hard." Jasmine stopped what she was doing, looking at him with surprise. "I never imagined that. That I grew up poor?" Michael finished with a gentle smile. "A lot of people don't know, or forget. It's easier to just see what I am now and assume it's always been that way." He stood up and walked to the partially covered window. Moving the aluminum foil slightly, he looked out at the desolate neighborhood, lit only by a few street lamps and the flames from barrels burning on street corners. "You know, Jasmine, my mother used to say that God never closes a door without opening a window." He turned to face her. "But what she didn't say is that sometimes you need someone to help push that window open when it's stuck." Little Elijah stirred on the mattress, making soft noises in his sleep. Michael watched the baby for a moment, seeing in him the future. A future that could be bright or dark, depending on the hand life dealt him. And in that moment, he felt something he hadn't in years: a clear purpose, a mission beyond basketball courts, million-dollar contracts, and fame. "Do you really believe that?" Jasmine asked, sitting on the edge of the mattress near her son. "In windows opening when doors close?" "I believe it," Michael replied firmly. "And I believe our meeting today wasn't a coincidence." He stepped closer, sitting on the floor near her, completely ignoring the fact that his jeans probably cost more than everything in that apartment. "Jasmine, can I ask you a personal question?" She nodded shyly. "If you could change one thing in your life right now, anything, What would it be? The young mother looked at her sleeping son, gently running her fingers through the baby's black curls. Security, she replied after a moment of reflection. I'm not talking about wealth or luxury, just knowing we won't be evicted tomorrow, that Elijah will have something to eat next week, that if he gets sick, I can take him to a doctor without having to choose between his treatment and the rent. She lifted her eyes, meeting Michael's intense gaze. It might sound simple, but to me, it would mean everything. Just not having to live in constant fear. Michael nodded slowly. It doesn't sound simple. It sounds like the most fundamental thing any human being deserves. He stood up, walking to the window again. For a long moment, he remained silent, as if making an important decision. When he turned around, a new determination filled his eyes. Jasmine, I want to help you and Elijah, not just with groceries or donations, but truly change your situation. Her expression was a mix of hope and mistrust, the natural reaction of someone who had learned the hard way that promises are often broken and that hope often leads to disappointment. Why? She asked simply. You don't even know me. Michael stepped closer again, sitting in the folding chair. When I was 13, my mother got very sick. Pneumonia. We couldn't afford proper treatment, so she kept working, even though she could barely breathe. He paused, the pain of that memory still fresh. Our neighbor, Mrs. Coleman, wasn't wealthy. She worked as a cook in a small restaurant, but she came to our house one day with medicine, homemade soup, and extra blankets. She took care of my mom for 2 whole weeks. Michael looked directly into Jasmine's eyes. When my mother asked why she was helping so much, do you know what Mrs. Coleman said? Because someone did the same for me when I needed it. And one day, you'll do it for someone else. He leaned forward, his voice low but intense. For years, I've helped many people through foundations, donations, programs. But today in that supermarket, I saw my mother in you, Jasmine. I saw the same dignity, the same strength, the same unconditional love for a child. Elijah whimpered softly in his sleep, and Jasmine instinctively reached out to soothe him, rubbing his back in slow circles. The baby settled immediately, recognizing his mother's touch even in dreams. I'm here today because Mrs. Coleman helped my mother when we needed it most, Michael continued. And now, it's my turn to do the same. The silence that followed was filled only with the soft breathing of Elijah and the constant hum of the old fridge. Silent tears began to fall down Jasmine's face, but she didn't wipe them away. They were tears carrying years of struggle, exhaustion, and a hope so fragile she barely dared to acknowledge it. I'm scared, she finally admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Of what? Michael asked gently. Of believing. Of having hope. She looked around the small apartment as if memorizing every detail. When you expect nothing, you don't get disappointed. I learned that very young. Michael nodded, deeply understanding that feeling. It makes sense to protect yourself like that. But sometimes, Jasmine, it takes courage to accept help, just as much as it takes to survive alone. He walked over to one of the grocery bags. He rummaged for a moment and pulled out a small cup of yogurt, the same kind she had looked at so longingly in the supermarket but couldn't afford. For Elijah, he said, handing her the yogurt, for when he wakes up. It was such a simple gesture, but so full of meaning. Jasmine took the cup with both hands, as if it were something precious, and more tears came. Thank you, she whispered. Jasmine, Michael said, his voice firm but gentle. Tomorrow morning, my driver will come to pick you up. You and Elijah will meet me so we can talk about the future. A different future. Her eyes widened with a mix of surprise and apprehension. But I have to work tomorrow, at Mrs. Peterson's house. If I don't show up, she'll hire someone else, and I can't afford to lose that money. Don't worry about that, Michael assured her. I'll make sure Mrs. Peterson is compensated for the day, and you won't lose your pay either. He walked to the door, stopping just before leaving. Jasmine, today you taught me something important, something that, with all my fame and fortune, I was beginning to forget. What? She asked, intrigued. That true strength isn't about never falling, Michael replied, glancing meaningfully at the small apartment, impeccably clean and organized despite all its limitations. It's about getting back up every time life knocks you down. He smiled at her. Not the rehearsed smile from million-dollar ads, but a genuine one, from one human being to another. Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow will be the first day of a new life for you and Elijah. With those words, he left, gently closing the door behind him. In the dark hallway, Michael took a deep breath, feeling a mix of emotions. Sadness for Jasmine and Elijah's situation, anger at a system that allowed people to work so hard and still live in poverty, but also a renewed sense of determination. Descending the worn stairs of the building, Michael Jordan, the man who had conquered the world through skill, determination, and hard work, made a silent promise not just to Jasmine and Elijah, but to the memory of his mother and to all the Mrs. Colemans of the world. This story wouldn't end here. This would be just the first page of a new chapter in that young mother and her son's life. A chapter of hope, dignity, and opportunity. A chapter he would help write. And as he walked toward the waiting SUV, Michael Jordan, basketball legend, billionaire, global icon, felt something money and fame had never truly given him. The transformative power of reaching out to someone in need and saying, through actions and not just words, you are not alone, you matter, and together we're going to change your story. The next morning, the sun timidly rose over the modest neighborhood where Jasmine lived. The young mother looked at the clock for the 10th time in the last 5 minutes. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the simple but clean outfit she had carefully laid out the night before. Beside the worn-out couch, Elijah played with a small, tattered teddy bear, the only toy he had. "Today will be different, my love," Jasmine whispered, bending down to kiss her son's forehead. "Mommy doesn't know what's going to happen, but Mr. Jordan said he wanted to talk about something important." Jasmine's heart raced. Michael Jordan, the legendary basketball star, had not only stood up for her during a public humiliation, he had also stocked her pantry and said he wanted to talk. What was he going to say? The rumble of an engine interrupted her thoughts. Jasmine rushed to the window and pulled back the faded curtain. The doorbell rang, making her jump. It was David, Michael Jordan's driver. "Good morning, Miss Jasmine. I've come to take you and your son to meet with Mr. Jordan at his office this morning." Jasmine felt her knees weaken. "Yes, of course. I just need to grab Elijah's bag," she stammered, hurrying inside. With trembling hands, Jasmine gathered the few diapers she had, a bottle, and a change of clothes for her son. She glanced at the cracked mirror in the hallway and tried to tidy her curly hair. There was no time for more. "Let's go, my love," she said, picking up Elijah. The ride in the luxurious car felt like a dream. Jasmine watched the city streets pass by through the window, while Elijah, fascinated by the vehicle's interior, clapped his little hands with joy. "Is Mr. Jordan always this generous with people he just met?" Jasmine asked timidly. David smiled through the rearview mirror. "Mr. Jordan has a big heart, ma'am, but I must say I've never seen him so affected by a situation as he was the day he met you." He went home in silence, deep in thought. Said he needed to do something meaningful. The driver's words brought tears to Jasmine's eyes. What had she done to deserve such compassion? When the car stopped in front of an impressive office building, Jasmine held Elijah tightly against her chest, as if her son could protect her from the unknown. David opened the door for them and guided them through the luxurious lobby to the elevator. "Mr. Jordan is excited to see you both," David said as they ascended. "He's been preparing some things for you all morning." The elevator stopped on the top floor, and the doors opened to reveal a spacious and elegant office. And there he was, Michael Jordan, standing near a large window with a stunning view of the city. When he saw them, his face lit up with a warm smile. "Jasmine, I'm so glad you came," he said, approaching and extending his hand. Elijah looked so happy. "Hey there, little champ." The baby smiled shyly, hiding his face on his mother's shoulder. "Mr. Jordan, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've already done for us," Jasmine began, her voice choked with emotion. "Please call me Michael," he said, gesturing toward a comfortable sofa. "Let's sit down. We have a lot to talk about." Jasmine sat down, placing Elijah on her lap. The little one was soon distracted by a colorful toy Michael had thoughtfully placed on the coffee table. "Jasmine, ever since yesterday at the grocery store, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you and your son." Michael began, sitting across from her. I want to help you, Jasmine. Not just with food or money, but with something no one can ever take from you, education and opportunity. Michael stood up and grabbed a folder from his desk. When he opened it, he revealed several brochures from Wilson School of Nursing. You said you dreamed of becoming a nurse. I spoke with the school's director. Classes for the next semester begin in 2 weeks. If you're willing, I want to fully cover your tuition. Nursing is a noble and well-paying profession. You'll be able to build a dignified future for yourself and for Elijah. Jasmine's eyes widened in shock. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Tears began to stream silently down her face. I've always dreamed of being a nurse, she finally whispered, since I was a little girl. But after I got pregnant and Elijah's father left us, I thought that dream had died. Michael smiled gently. Dreams never truly die, Jasmine. Sometimes they just need a little help to come back to life. Elijah, as if sensing the importance of the moment, reached his little arms toward Michael, who picked him up with ease. But how will I study and take care of Elijah at the same time? Jasmine asked, worried. And how will I support myself during the course? I've thought about that too, Michael replied. I have a friend, Mrs. Thompson, who runs an excellent daycare near the nursing school. Elijah will have a spot there, fully covered. As for work, I arranged a position for you at the university hospital as an administrative assistant. The schedule is flexible and compatible with your classes. Jasmine covered her face with her hands and began to sob. These were different tears from the ones she had shed in the supermarket. They were tears of hope, of gratitude, of a future beginning to unfold before her eyes. Why are you doing this for me? She asked between sobs. You don't even know me. Michael gently placed Elijah on the couch and knelt in front of Jasmine, holding her hands. When I was young, many people doubted I could get where I am today. But there were also people who believed in me when I needed it most. Today, I'm just passing that blessing forward. You're strong, Jasmine. I can see it in your eyes. I see the same determined look my mother had. All you need is a fair chance. In that moment, Jasmine knew her life would never be the same again. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Jasmine's routine had completely changed. Every morning, she would take Elijah to daycare, where the little boy was thriving, making friends, and learning new things every day. Then she would head to work at the hospital, where she learned how the institution operated, gained experience, and prepared for the day she would become a nurse. In the afternoon, she attended classes at Wilson School of Nursing. The course was demanding, but Jasmine stood out. Years of adversity had forged in her a strength and determination that impressed both professors and classmates. Among her classmates was Sarah Collins, a kind and studious young woman. The two soon became friends, sharing notes and studying together in the library. Sarah admired Jasmine's story of resilience, while Jasmine appreciated Sarah's intelligence and generous heart. I'm so glad we got paired in the lab, Sarah said one day as they practiced taking vital signs. You have a way with patients that you can't learn from books. Jasmine smiled, adjusting her stethoscope. I think when you've been through so much, you learn to value care and kindness. That's true, Sarah agreed. By the way, next week is the end of semester gathering. Are you bringing Elijah? I really want to meet him. Yes, I will. And maybe Mr. Jordan will show up too. He always checks in on my progress in the course. Sarah's eyes widened. Michael Jordan? The Michael Jordan is helping you? What do you mean? That's when Jasmine told her friend the whole story about the supermarket, the humiliation she endured, and how Michael Jordan stepped in and changed her life forever. That's amazing, Sarah exclaimed, genuinely impressed. My dad's been a supermarket manager for years, but he's never mentioned a story like that. Neither of them could have imagined the irony of those words. On the day of the end of semester celebration, the hall at Wilson School of Nursing was decorated with simplicity and elegance. Students, families, and teachers gathered in a spirit of celebration. Jasmine arrived wearing a simple but beautiful dress, a gift from Michael. Elijah, now almost 2 years old, walked beside her with unsteady steps, wearing a shirt and pants that made him look like a little gentleman. Michael Jordan arrived discreetly, trying not to draw too much attention, but his presence couldn't go unnoticed. Many admiring glances followed him as he walked toward Jasmine and Elijah. "You look beautiful," he said, hugging her warmly. "And you, champ, you're growing up way too fast," he added, picking Elijah up, who immediately started laughing and tugging at his tie. On the other side of the room, Mr. Collins, the supermarket manager, had just arrived to pick up his daughter. He was proud of Sarah and wanted to surprise her by showing up at the event. Wearing his best suit, he carried a small bouquet of flowers. "Dad," Sarah exclaimed when she saw him. "What a wonderful surprise." Mr. Collins hugged his daughter proudly. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, sweetheart. How's the party going?" "It's wonderful. Come on, I want to introduce you to my friend Jasmine. She's amazing, Dad. You won't believe her story." Sarah began leading her father through the hall, excitedly telling him about the friend she so admired. She was so poor she could barely feed her son. She was humiliated in a supermarket and almost lost hope, until Michael Jordan showed up and changed everything. Can you believe it? And the best part, he's here today. Mr. Collins' smile froze on his face. A cold chill ran down his spine. "Michael Jordan? The basketball player?" he asked, his voice strained. "Yes, look, she's right over there with him." When Sarah pointed across the room, Mr. Collins felt the world stop. There was Jasmine, the same young, poor black woman he had humiliated months ago, smiling and talking with Michael Jordan, who was lovingly playing with a child in his arms. The recognition was instant and devastating. How could he forget that face, those desperate eyes that had looked at him as he threw her out of the store? And now his own daughter considered her a friend. "Dad, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost," Sarah asked, worried about her father's sudden paleness. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little tired," he lied, unable to take his eyes off Jasmine and Jordan. At that moment, the course coordinator stepped onto the small stage and asked for everyone's attention. "Dear students and families, welcome to our end-of-semester gathering. We are so proud of each of your achievements. Before we begin dinner, would anyone like to say a few words?" To everyone's surprise, Jasmine timidly raised her hand. With an encouraging smile from Michael, she stepped up onto the stage, holding Elijah by the hand. Mr. Collins felt his stomach sink. He wanted to disappear, to run away, but his feet felt glued to the floor. "Good evening, everyone," Jasmine began, her voice soft but steady. "My name is Jasmine Williams, and this is my son Elijah. 6 months ago, I had no hope. I was a desperate single mother, working as a cleaner and barely able to feed my child." The hall fell completely silent. Every eye was fixed on the young mother and her small son. "One day, I walked into a supermarket, hungry and with not enough money. A manager saw my difficult situation and threw me out. Instead of compassion, I found humiliation." Tears began to stream down Jasmine's face, but her voice remained firm. "He looked at me like I was less than human. He threw me out in front of everyone, making it clear that people like me were not welcome in his store." Mr. Collins felt his daughter's questioning gaze fall on him. His breathing grew heavy, and beads of sweat formed on his forehead. "At that moment, I thought I had hit rock bottom. But then something incredible happened. Michael Jordan, yes, the legendary Michael Jordan, witnessed it all and stepped in." Jasmine looked at Michael with gratitude, who was watching her with evident pride. "He didn't just pay for my groceries and stand up for me. He did something that changed my life forever. He believed in me. He gave me a decent job, placed my son in an excellent daycare, and is paying for my nursing studies." At that moment, there wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium. Even the teachers who only partially knew Jasmine's story were moved by her speech. "Today, 6 months later, I'm among the top students in my class. My son is healthy and happy. I have a job that gives me dignity, and I'm building a future that used to be just a distant dream." Jasmine picked up Elijah and hugged him tightly. "I've learned that sometimes we just need someone to believe in us, even when we can't believe in ourselves. And I've learned we should judge less and help more." Her eyes scanned the room and, for a brief moment, met those of Mr. Collins. The recognition was immediate. The arrogant manager who had once humiliated her was the father of her friend Sarah. There was a palpable moment of tension, a second that seemed to stretch into eternity. Jasmine could have exposed him. She could have pointed her finger and said, "That man was the one who humiliated me." It would have been the perfect revenge, seeing the proud manager humiliated in front of his daughter and the entire school community. But instead, Jasmine did something extraordinary. She smiled gently and continued her speech. Today, I want to thank not only Michael Jordan for his generosity, but also everyone who was part of this journey. The teachers who encouraged me, the classmates who supported me, and even those who doubted me, because they gave me even more determination to prove my worth. Mr. Collins's legs were trembling. He didn't deserve that mercy. He expected hatred, expected to be exposed, but not that silent dignity. And finally, Jasmine continued, I want you all to know that I intend to graduate with honors and repay all this kindness by helping others who, like me, just need a chance. The auditorium erupted in applause. Michael Jordan was the first to stand, followed by everyone else. Jasmine stepped down from the stage with Elijah in her arms, welcomed by hugs and words of admiration. Michael approached her, his eyes shining with emotion. I'm so proud of you, Jasmine. You didn't just overcome the obstacles. You did it with incomparable grace and dignity. I should be the one thanking you, Michael, she replied tearfully. You didn't just change my life. You taught me the true meaning of compassion and generosity. Michael smiled, shaking his head. Actually, I should be the one thanking you, Jasmine. You reminded me what really matters in life. Amid million-dollar contracts and worldwide fame, it's easy to forget that true value lies in how we treat one another, especially those who need us most. Across the room, Sarah looked at her father with concern. Dad, you look pale. What's wrong? Do you know Jasmine? Mr. Collins felt the weight of shame like never before. He looked at his daughter, at those innocent eyes that looked up to him, and knew he could no longer live with the lie. Sarah, I need to tell you something. Something I'm not proud of. Meanwhile, Jasmine was receiving congratulations from classmates and teachers. Suddenly, she felt a presence behind her. Turning around, she saw Mr. Collins standing a few steps away, his face twisted in a deep expression of regret. Time seemed to freeze once again. The two locked eyes in silence while the rest of the hall continued in celebration. Miss Williams, he began, voice trembling. I don't even know where to begin. Jasmine looked at him without hatred, without resentment, just with the calm of someone who had found inner peace. Mr. Collins, she replied calmly, what I did to you that day, it was unforgivable. I treated you with cruelty and inhumanity. There's no excuse for it. Tears streamed freely down the face of the man who once seemed so arrogant and unshakable. Sarah is my daughter. She speaks of you with such admiration, not knowing that her own father was the monster in your story. Jasmine held Elijah tighter, as if drawing strength from her son. I'm not here to ask for your forgiveness, because I know I don't deserve it, Mr. Collins continued. I'm here to say that you taught me a lesson I'll carry for the rest of my life. Your dignity today in choosing not to expose me even when you had every right to, that showed me the person I should have been, but never was. Michael Jordan, who had been watching the scene from a distance, approached and stood protectively beside Jasmine. Mr. Collins, Michael said in a firm but non-threatening tone, acknowledging your mistakes is the first step, but turning that recognition into action is what truly matters. The manager nodded, wiping away tears. Sarah, who had approached and heard part of the conversation, looked from her father to Jasmine, her expression a mix of confusion and horror. Dad, was it you? The manager in Jasmine's story was you. Mr. Collins lowered his head, unable to meet his daughter's disappointed gaze. Yes, Sarah, it was me, and not a day goes by that I don't deeply regret it. Sarah turned to Jasmine, eyes full of tears. Jasmine, I didn't know. Please forgive me. Jasmine shook her head. You have nothing to apologize for, Sarah. You're a wonderful friend. We are not defined by our parents' mistakes. At that moment, Elijah's tiny hand reached out toward Mr. Collins, with the innocence only children possess, unaware of resentment or pain. The simple gesture brought tears to everyone's eyes. See, Jasmine said softly, even Elijah is willing to give a second chance. Mr. Collins looked at that tiny hand as if it were the most precious thing in the world. With trembling hands, he touched Elijah's fingers, who smiled innocently. I don't deserve such kindness, he murmured. Michael Jordan placed a hand on Mr. Collins' shoulder. None of us truly deserve the blessings we receive, Mr. Collins. That's why they're called blessings, not payments. What matters is what we do with them. The celebration went on, but something had changed in the air. A silent lesson of forgiveness and redemption echoed through the hall, touching the hearts of everyone present. At the end of the night, when most guests had already left, Jasmine found herself in a quiet corner of the hall with Michael and Elijah. The little one had fallen asleep in his mother's arms, exhausted after such an emotional night. "You could have exposed him," Michael said, watching Elijah's peaceful face. "No one would have blamed you." Jasmine gently stroked her son's hair. "What example would I be setting for my child? That when we have power over someone, we should use it to humiliate, like he did to me? Breaking that cycle of hate is more important than any revenge." Michael smiled, admiration shining in his eyes. "You're going to be an amazing nurse, Jasmine. You have the right heart for it." "And it's all thanks to you," she replied. "No," Michael disagreed. "You've always had that strength within you. I just helped remove a few obstacles from your path. The rest was all your doing." Jasmine stood up, holding Elijah peacefully asleep in her arms. She looked at Michael Jordan, the man who had transformed her life, and there weren't enough words to express her gratitude. With a gesture that spoke louder than 1,000 words, she stepped forward and hugged him, her son nestled between them. A hug that symbolized not only gratitude, but also hope, resilience, and the beauty of reaching out to those in need. In that moment, there was no basketball star and no former janitor. There were only two human beings connected by the noblest aspect of the human spirit: the ability to see beyond appearances, to believe in someone's potential, and to change lives through compassion. And as Michael returned the hug, he knew that of all the victories he had achieved on the court, none compared to the joy of watching Jasmine blossom and overcome adversity with such dignity. The true legacy isn't in the trophies we collect, but in the lives we touch along the journey. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss more inspiring stories like this. Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts on this emotional moment between Michael Jordan and Jasmine. Your support makes all the difference.